Hi developers, in this video we'll learn how to create a Docker container to run an Angular application. We'll be going through the process of creating the Angular application using the ng command. Then we'll add a Docker file that contains all the instructions needed in order to build and run the application in release mode. This Docker file will be used later in order to build the image. Now that we have the image, we'll go and tag it. Then we'll push it to Docker Hub so that we'll make it available for our CI/CD processes and also for our production environment. To create the Angular application, I'll go to VS Code, and right here I have created an SRC folder, and from here I want to add a new Angular application. For that I'll use the terminal, which I can find it inside the view folder right here. And from right here I'll go and type ng new and the name of my Angular app, so let's say it is an Angular-app. So this will add a new folder containing all the files needed for an Angular application to be able to run. Of course, here you need to make sure that you have Angular installed on your machine. Once that's done successfully right here, now we can go and say ng serve -o in order to launch the application inside the default browser. So I select enter, and here it tells me that it didn't find the required files, the angular.json, because here I'm running the command from inside the src folder. So I need to go inside the Angular app. So let's go and say cd inside the Angular app. Once we are inside that folder, now we can invoke again ng serve -o, and now it is able to launch my Angular application inside the browser. Great, now let's try to Dockerize this application. For that I'll go and say Ctrl+C in order to stop the execution of the app, and here to move this Angular application into a Docker container, we need to use the Docker file, which will contain all the instructions needed in order to build and deploy the Angular app inside a container. For that, right here, I'll go and use an existing Docker file. So I have created one, which we can find it in my GitHub repo right here. If you go to this project, then here I'll be using the same content for this Docker file. So I'll go and copy this one, then I'll use it right here. So I'll go and create a new file. We call it Docker file, and the content of this Docker file will be the same content I use it from GitHub. So here we'll use two stages. The first stage will be used to build the image, so that it generates the dist folder, which contains all the deployable files for an Angular application. And in stage 2 we'll be using another image in order to run the application. So from the first stage, what we are doing right here, we are using the node container image, which is optimized for building the application. So we are using the latest version of it. Then we are setting the working directory to be /app. So all of the operations right here will be run inside this /app folder. Then we'll go and copy the current folder. Current is relatively to the path of the Docker file. So when my Docker file is right here, it means it will copy all this content to from right here to inside the Docker image. Inside the Docker image, they will be inside the app folder. Then what we'll be doing is that we'll go and run npm install. Running npm install will resolve all the dependencies. It means the node modules. Then we'll go and run npm run build --prod. This one will go and generate the dist folder, which contains all the deployable packages. Once we have those dist folder, we'll go to stage number 2, and stage number 2 will go and move to another Docker image, which is the nginx image. This one is optimized for running the application. The first one is optimized for building the app. This means it contains the tools needed for to do ng, and also the tools to build and also debug the application. But the second one is optimized for production, so it means it's a lightweight application and it doesn't have all the dependencies that are installed on the first one. So here we have better performance. We'll be using the Alpine version, and the only instruction we are making right here is that we'll go and copy from the first image, we'll go and copy the content of the /app dist Angular app folder. We'll go and copy it to a folder called nginx HTML, which is the default folder used by nginx image in order to host the Angular application. And the content right here, this is going to be /app, which is the default folder for the first image, then /dist, which is the file that is generated by the first image, which we said it contains the deployable packages, then Angular -app, because here I do have a configuration in my app inside, or actually inside the angular.json, where here I have a configuration saying that the output path directory should be the dist/the angular-app, which is right here the name of the folder right here. So now that we have created the Docker file, let's now build this image. For that, I can go and say docker build command and pass all the arguments, but right here in VS Code I have installed a plugin called Docker, which you can find it inside the extensions menu. And right here, if you go and look for Docker, then you will find this plugin created by Microsoft. You could install it in order to make it easy to manage Docker images. So for commands, for example, if we want to run the docker build command, we can go right click and go select command palette, and from here we'll have like a wizard that will help us to run the docker build command with all the arguments it needs. So let's now right here choose or look for docker, and here you see we have all the commands for docker, like docker build, push, tag, run, and so on. Here we are looking for docker build, so I have the command right here. I'll go and select it. Then here it starts to ask me what are the parameters needed to run this command. So it needs to know where is my docker file. So I select this path right here because it looks inside my current solution folder and it finds this only docker file. So I select that one because that one the one I want to use. Then here it asks for the name that I want to use for my application. So here I say I'm okay, I want to call it angular-app, but instead of like this I want to call it v1, for example. Now I select enter, and this will create the docker build command with all the parameters that we have entered. Then it will try to run the content, or it will try to run the docker file. So as the first step, it started downloading the node image because it's not already installed in my machine. Then it started to setting the working directory as the /app folder. Then now it is copying the content of my current folder right here to inside the docker image. Then now it started running the npm install in order to resolve all the dependencies for my Angular app. Once all the instructions are finished and executing successfully, here we get the message saying that our image was built and tagged successfully. Now we can run the Docker image. So we can go and say docker run and specify all the arguments for this command, but we can also use the extension, the Docker extension, using the command palette. So here I'll go and look for docker run command. So I select it, then I select the image I want to use. So I select the image that I have just created, and this will generate the command for me. So now my image is running on port 80. So if I go to localhost on port 80, here I have my Angular application running from inside the container. The first one that we have run it was running from using the resources for my host machine. but this one is from the Angular or from a Docker container. Now we want to push this our container into Docker Hub as they have done for this app right here. Notice that here I'm using the same name for my Angular app, but I don't have a v1 yet. So let's create, or let's upload this image that we have created right here. To do that, first I need to tag my image. For that, I'll use again the command palette and look for the command for Docker tag. Let's select that, and here to ask me which image I want to tag. So I select the image that I have created, and I want to tag it using this name, but also I need to append the name of my Docker account right here, my Docker ID, which you can find if you go sign in to Docker Hub, create an account, and then you will have your own Docker ID. You cannot use my Docker ID right here. You need to create your own Docker ID. So please make sure you create your own. We are ready now. We can press enter, and this will generate or will create a tagged image. We are now ready to push our image to Docker Hub. So to do that, first you'll need to say Docker login, then you follow the instructions where you will need to put your Docker ID and your Docker passwords. I have already done that, so now I'm ready to go and say Docker push. So I'll go and select Docker push right here, then I'll choose the image that I have tagged, which is this one right here. So that generated the command Docker push with the name of my image and the tag. It's connecting to my Docker Hub account. Once we have pushed successfully our image to a Docker Hub, now we can go to Docker Hub to our account. Then I go and refresh, and here I should be able to see my v1 container was uploaded to my Docker Hub account. Follow me in the next video to show you how we can deploy this image that we have pushed to Docker Hub in order to deploy it to Kubernetes using the deployment and service YAML files.